Okay. I'm going to be presenting tonight on the value of solar. We as a group thought this was a good topic to share with our member cooperative member owners because a lot of times in cooperative world, they fail to recognize the value of solar, or will say that solar really doesn't bring value to their grid system. So I'm hoping that I can show you tonight some ways that it does actually bring value and provide some education that would be helpful for you in the future in the event that you do decide to address your boards and this particular topic does come up. So now I'm going to move to sharing my screen, and hopefully I don't fumble here. And there we are. Perfect. Again, this is our solar advocacy group. Tonight's topic is the value of solar. All of these presentations are being put together by a coalition of downstate solar businesses comprised of AES, of course, Orr and Sharif are on with us tonight. Straight Up Solar, EFS Solar, TikTok Energy, and WindSolarUSA. So I thought we'd start with the value of solar by definition, just so we kind of understand what we're talking about. So it's a methodology that takes a uniform approach to establish the true value of the electricity produced by the distributed energy system. Currently, the solar energy that is generated from photovoltaic systems varies in price depending on the state and the particular utility. So if we look at the value of solar, residential solar is really an opportunity. So rooftop solar is, as we know, sustainable and an economic, efficient solution for the grid of the future. It gives consumers access to rooftop solar. It enables competitive energy choice, innovation, cleaner air, and more American jobs. Over 250,000 Americans work in solar all across the 50 states in the US. The industry grew 17 times faster than the overall economy back in 2016. Individual investments in rooftop solar benefit all Americans by increasing energy security and reliability and reducing other utility spending. So this is from 2019, and this is the US electricity jobs. So we see here solar at the top, coming in first at 242,343 jobs. The combined gas and coal industry at 198,887. Natural gas at 112,685. Wind at 111,166. Coal at 86,202. Hydro 66,448. And nuclear at 62,987. So solar provides more jobs than natural gas and coal together if we combine them. So in terms of grid services, rooftop solar can support the grid in multiple ways, such as daytime generation capacity. We think of it in summer. We're all running air conditioning 24/7. So the summer solstice is the best, in theory, the best producing day of the year in terms of solar. And so whenever we're running that, using that electricity the most, that's when solar is doing the best. It also reduces electrical losses and distribution and system level demand reduction. So by someone having a solar system on their home and producing their own energy, their loads are met first, as you know, as solar owners. And so that means you're pulling less energy from the grid, which creates less demand on the grid. Solar and storage will unlock an even greater amount of grid support services like frequency response, load shifting, peak reduction, reliability-based demand response, and voltage support and dispatch. So where this is really relative, if we're talking about frequency regulation, load shifting, peak reduction, In an instance of a commercial business in a utility territory where a utility charges peak demand rates, that can actually, you can actually set it up so that energy is stored in the batteries. And then at the time that the peak demand rate period is being figured out, so the peak demand rates will be charged, you can shift over to the batteries so that you're not using as much energy, which then lowers the amount of peak demand. So there's a lot of great things in the future that when we integrate storage, we'll be able to use to help stabilize the grid, for one, but also to help stabilize rates for the system owner. Now, this is a graph put out by the Alliance for Solar Choice, and this shows the effects on energy pricing. So this is relative to residential solar on retail energy prices, and it's significantly smaller than other utility expenditures. So we have it broken into categories. The center line down here is 0 cents, and then we're negative here on this side and positive here. If we look at net metered PV, impact at current penetration levels across a range of value of solar assumptions, we're pretty much right here in the middle. Net metered PV, we could go either way, same thing, we're plus or minus. This is at impact, this one was at impact at 2030 penetration levels across a range of value of solar assumptions. This one is at 10% penetration. Now then, energy efficiency, the impact of projected 2015 through 2030 energy efficiency savings if avoided costs are valued at the same rate as solar. Then we start seeing it slide more to the positive side when we get into natural gas. The range in retail electricity price across the 10th, the 90th percentile gas price confidence intervals for 2030. This is US average. And then the RPS, that relates to the renewable portfolio standard. The impact in 2030 across low and high cost scenarios. Among RPS states, of which Illinois is one, our current RPS goal is 25% renewables by 2025. Current energy legislation that is before legislators is working to expand that to 100% renewables by 2050. Carbon. This is the impact of carbon in 2030 across multiple studies, each considering multiple implementation scenarios. And so we see that that's going to cause an increase to electricity rates by up to about 1.5 cents, or yeah, here. And then capital expenditures. So this is the gross impact of electric industry capital expenditures through 2030 across a range of different trajectories. And so here we see it's anywhere from 1.5 cents to up to about 3 3/4 cents. So the effects can have a big impact across the board here. Now, if we look at the effects of energy pricing, continuing with that, in January of 2017, the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab, LBNL, we'll refer to it as, report found that future utility capital expenditures on network upgrades and generation are expected to raise consumers' electricity prices far more than distributed solar. They estimate a 1.6 to 3.6 cents per kilowatt hour increase in the US average of retail electricity prices in 2030 as a result of future utility capital expenditures, compared to a 0.2 cents per kilowatt hour increase or decrease, so one way or the other, in retail utility prices in 2030 from projected rooftop solar levels. So I think that's interesting, and that's what that last CapEx category was showing us, that to keep the grid stabilized using traditional sources of energy, we'd be looking at a 1.6 to 3.6 increase, whereas with distributed generation solar, especially on the residential level, we're looking at a 0.2 cent either increase or decrease, so staying pretty level. Now, is Is rooftop solar currently undervalued? Well, there's been a review of 11 net metering studies that find that rooftop solar delivers benefits far beyond what solar customers are receiving in net metering credit. Rooftop solar provides net benefits to the entire electric grid through reduced capital investment costs, avoided energy costs, and reduced environmental compliance costs. 8 of the 11 studies found the value of solar energy to be higher than the average local residential retail electricity rate. The median value of solar power across all 11 studies was nearly 17 cents per unit, compared to the nation's average retail electricity rate of about 12 cents per unit. So we often hear, and you will hear this in cooperative territories especially, that solar adds no value. They want to pay, in many cases, specifically in the 2 utility territories that we're addressing tonight, Southwestern and Southeastern, avoid what we call avoided cost, which is about 3.4 cents per kilowatt hour. And these studies are showing that they should actually be paying more than what they're charging you for retail. So these are actual commission studies, and I used these because I think when we're talking about public utility commissions, those are independent governmental state agencies that are in charge of looking at the utilities for their particular state. So I would consider this to be a rather unbiased source that's looking out for the best interest of the individuals in that state. So a 2013 study conducted by Vermont's Public Service Department concludes that net metered systems do not impose a significant net cost to ratepayers who are not net metering participants. So this goes to the point that we always hear that the non-solar customers are subsidizing the solar customers in utility territories. This study dispelled that myth. A 2014 study commissioned by the Nevada Public Utility Commission concludes that net metering provides $36 million in benefits to all Nevada energy customers. Furthermore, solar installations will make fewer costly grid upgrades necessary, leading to additional savings. The study estimates a net benefit of $166 million over the lifetime of solar systems installed through 2016. So that was in Nevada. Next, we move to Mississippi. A 2014 study commissioned by the Mississippi Public Services Commission concludes that the benefits of implementing solar net metering outweigh the costs in all but one scenario. The study finds that distributed solar can help avoid significant infrastructure investments, take pressure off the state's oil and gas generation at peak demand times, and lower rates. Continuing on, in Maine, a 2015 study commissioned by the Maine Public Utility Commission puts a value of 33 cents per kilowatt hour on energy generated by distributed solar, compared to their average retail price of 13 cents per kilowatt hour. The study concludes that solar power provides a substantial public benefit because it reduces electricity prices due to the displacement of more expensive power sources, reduces air and climate pollution, reduces costs for the electric grid system, reduces the need to build more power plants to meet peak demand, stabilizes prices, and promotes energy security. And finally, in Maryland, on an April 10th of 2018 draft study from Maryland's Public Service Commission showed behind-the-meter solar's 2019 value in the state's investor-owned utility territories to be between 31 cents per kilowatt hour and 41 cents per kilowatt hour. Presently, in cooperative territories, especially Southeastern and Southwestern, you guys are being compensated for everything that is fed back to the grid at around 3.4 cents per kilowatt hour. So let's move forward to present day. there was a recent study done by the Power Bureau. And this study was performed by Illinois-based Power Bureau, which is actually led by the former Illinois Power Agency Director, Mark Pruitt. He found that expanding the Illinois Renewable Energy Program would save consumers $1.21 billion, I said, over 10 years. And then he gives us a breakdown of that. So this is the following impacts that will occur if Illinois expands its renewable energy program to 40% by 2031. Now let's keep in mind that right now in 2021, we're at about a 9% penetration percentage in terms of what's already been built. So that's a pretty aggressive goal for us to get there. So renewable energy program funding to help spur that growth would add $2.94 billion. Wholesale energy cost reduction, though, would be $1.76 billion. Wholesale capacity costs would reduce another $1.79 billion. And then the retail supply cost of distributed generation would reduce by another $603 million. So the net consumer cost savings, when we total all that up, is $1.21 billion in savings to consumers in Illinois. Sorry. So let's summarize the value of solar. So what do we get? We get clean energy distributed generation. You're feeding neighbors with your excess generation, goes on the power line, and it has a very short distance to be exported. Sometimes in cooperative territories, you may have miles between each other, but still, it's a better means of distribution than having to import from the nearest substation, which had to import from the nearest power producer. Another benefit, jobs. As we saw, the jobs are growing in the renewable energy sectors much faster than those in the traditional fossil fuel sectors. We get an increase in energy security and reliability. We get a reduction in utility capital expenditures for grid support, relative especially to residential distributed generation where transformers and things like that are not having to be updated. We get carbon emissions reduction, which equals cleaner air. We get no coal ash to dispose of, possible impacts to ground and or the water. And if we have solar plus storage opportunities in the future, continuing to expand, we can shave peak demand. We can stabilize the grid during times of heavy AC consumption. We get voltage support and dispatch. And we provide a level of sustainability and self-sufficiency to solar owners. And we decrease overall electricity price increases to all consumers. Thank you for your attention. And at this time, I'd like to open it to questions and or discussion time.
Thank you, Michelle. That was great.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I see Orr trying to come up with one for me. I see him. See those wheels turning.
Well, the one I bring up pretty frequently is how it decreases maintenance to the utility by having the distributed generations out there. But it's hard to extrapolate exactly how much it does, depending on how widespread the grid is.
Right. And I think that in terms of the value of solar and trying to determine what that is, that it's difficult. And that's why I cited the commission studies, because we already do have states that have invested in determining the value of solar. And that's going to be happening in Illinois. Specifically because with the investor-owned utilities, not so much in the muni and co-op territories, but in the investor-owned utilities, once we reach that 3% penetration percentage, which Ameren already tried to say we reached and then found out we didn't, then that sparks the study by the Illinois Commerce Commission to determine the value of solar. So they'll be doing similar studies to what those others that I cited are. And then at 5%, they implement that. Presently, there's nothing in muni and co-op policy because there is no oversight or public regulation that has them looking at value of solar and or implementing a value of solar. And that's part of the reason that we're working on this educational series with member owners like Chris and like Joseph, to educate you guys about these type of things and to ask for more in your territories, and to want to have a fair value of solar, and to help dispel these myths about the non-solar versus solar customers and the subsidy question, which is going to be coming up in a future presentation on June 2nd that we hope you'll join us for, and that one will be led by Paul McKnight. So, you know, Illinois is positioned to do this study at some point, and we hope that we'll see similar results from what other states have seen, and that a fair value of solar gets implemented so that we can continue the growth that we need and hopefully get to those Power Bureau numbers put out by the Mark Pruitt recently, showing that the overall savings to consumers is going to be very significant.
I mean, it seems to me like if you combine the value of solar with the negatives that are coming out with like all the AMR and stuff, like all the ways they're messing up all the calculations, I don't know, all those things you listed out in that email, like with the positives plus the negatives, the value is so huge. It's like, I mean, are you calculating any of those values into your numbers?
Well, that will be calculated in when the Illinois Commerce Commission does that study. They'll be looking at that type of thing, and hopefully it'll be an independent third party, you know, a consulting firm of some type that will help them with that, because obviously the ICC doesn't have the staff to, you know, adequately determine the value of solar. Now, you know, the Power Bureau is a consulting agency that has already prepared that report. Mark Pruitt would probably be a good person. He has extensive experience in the Illinois electricity market with having ran the Illinois Power Agency, who, for those that don't know, that they're the state agency that is tasked with procuring electricity on behalf of the investor-owned utilities and making sure that everyone in the IOU territories is not left without power. So I don't know if that's who will be chosen to do that. But, you know, it's something that should probably be started sooner than later. And hopefully we'll get similar results, and that'll help to dispel some of the myths now that are going around, even within the investor-owned utilities. We hear this solar, non-solar subsidization thing across the board. It's not specific to just cooperative utilities. The only reason that we have, you know, retail net metering in the investor-owned utility territories, quite honestly, is because they're regulated and made to do it. And that speaks to the point of why we're seeking to gain more oversight for muni and co-op territories for member owners and residents of municipal utility territories, because we want to make sure that everybody's getting a fair shake in the state. It isn't just that those that live in the investor-owned utilities should get it. We're all Illinoisans. We all have opportunities to participate in the incentives, and we should also have fair policies and compensation for the value that our solar production is adding to the grid system.